XNUMX, Kent, Copenhagen. Dear readers, before beginning the story, I need to let you know that no epigraph will be added to it. You and I are supposed to know what all this story is about later, as it is drawing its silhouette as it goes on. I, the man writing this paragraph, am not the man who has finished writing this story. Rather, I am a man who is standing at the very beginning of it with you. There are some ideas in my head, and they are surely about this story, but I can't guarantee that they will sprout in any form later. Feel free to criticize my neglect of duty as a storyteller. One who should have a synopsis and a clear theme before beginning, and one who should diligently return to revise the manuscript when needed. I know myself well, at least of my writing habit. I go on developing the story further, rather than go back and rewrite. Why? Because the sentences I wrote earlier never make sense to me. Having said that, it still makes sense, to some extent, to put a quote here, because quotes have some messages and views of the world, and yet are never limited by anything certain. Here is a quote that shouldn't be regarded as an epigraph that would describe the whole story, but my resolution to start thinking from it, around it, or perhaps against it. Every author is surprised anew at the way in which his book, as soon he has sent it out, continues to have a life of its own. It seems to him as if one part of an insect had been cut off, and now went on its own way. Perhaps he forgets it almost entirely. Perhaps he rises above the view expressed therein. Perhaps he understands it no longer, and has lost impulse upon which he soared at the time he conceived the book. Meanwhile it seeks its readers, inflames life, pleases, horrifies, inspires new works, becomes the soul of designs and actions. In short, it lives like a creature endowed with mind and soul, and yet is no human being. The happiest fate is that of the author who, as an old man, is able to say that all there was in him of life-inspiring, strengthening, exalting, enlightening thoughts and feelings still lives on his writings, and that he himself now only represents the great ashes, whilst the fire has been kept alive and spread out. And if we consider that every human action, not only a book, is in some way or other the cause of other actions, decisions, and thoughts, that everything that happens is inseparably connected with everything that is going to happen, we recognize the real immortality, that a movement, that which has once moved, is enclosed and immortalized in the general union of all existence, like an insect within a piece of amber. To be honest, I don't care if you all readers are not real. I'm not a professional writer in the first place, nor someone who has some friends to whom he can read his works. This may contradict what is said in the quote above, but in my opinion, writing doesn't have to inspire actions, decisions, or thoughts of someone who is not the person who is writing it. Instead, it can be an inner driver of writing itself, inspiring next word, next idea, next development, as its life goes on, as if it lives on behalf of its author. What if the story grows on its own, even though it still needs, for its growth, to borrow knowledge from the author's brain? Then a question arises. In such a case, will the writing acquire immortality without real readers? In other words, can it continue existing after its author's death or oblivion, given it is recognized by nobody but him? Is it rather to be eliminated by the passage of time? The answer to this question is to be given in the story coming out. Though the question may not be answered, but just responded to or altered to a different form of question. I can't give you any expectations about it now. The story begins when I met a man named Arthur in a museum by accident. It was the warmest weather in those days, on a sunny holiday in early spring in London. A girl with hair dyed in red would have done something bad to one of the paintings. When I walked behind her, in room 4, I saw that the back pocket of her loose jeans was stuffed with something hard. The denim patch of the pocket bulged in a round shape. I imagined there would have been a tin can, and there would have been powder red like her hair in it, which would have been thick and sticky enough to vandalize a painting. The round thing swayed side to side in rhythm with a slight frame as she walked. This movement was decisive, unlike wandering through the brilliant collection of paintings. She was walking with another girl with similar outfits and similar height. The girl's hair was dark brown, which seemed to be her natural color of hair. She wore a buggy jacket that would have hidden something bad to the artworks as well, in its rich space inside. But for reasons unsure, I didn't imagine anything certain in it, like I did for the red-haired girl. The two girls walked past the world-renowned paintings. Jan van Eyck, Bosch, Bruegel. They glanced at the paintings they passed, not stopping, but as if briefly paying respects to each one for the limited moments they could spend, even though they would attempt to break one of them right now. A lean guy, who looked like being in his mid-50s, passed me from behind and reached his arm towards the girls. He put his hand on the red-haired girl's shoulder. She stopped her steps at the moment but didn't turn to the guy, frozen. They held off any actions for a few seconds. Meanwhile, another girl made 2 or 3 steps forward and then stopped, realizing that her body suddenly stopped a couple of seconds ago. She turned back and frowned, finding the guy whispering in the red-haired girl's ear, bending his upper body down like a crooked tree. This man is Arthur. I paid full attention to him whispering, but it was late. His first words to her were not discernible to me, and maybe the second and third words as well. Consequently, the words he said that I could capture were only, "Come with me." Arthur and the girl turned around and passed me, quietly, shoulder to shoulder. I found the girl's face like one drowned in a portrait. It was clear, cold, and represented nothing inside. Did Arthur suck up all that had lived within her through one of her ears? "B! B!" Another girl yelled at her. "You got scared? Are you going to leave me alone?" She rushed to the red-haired girl walking away, grabbed her shoulder, looked into the girl's eyes, and shouted the girl's name again. "You can't do that alone." That was the girl's reply. But now it seemed too difficult for her to do that. The visitors were already aware of the girls, that they planned to do would have been less effective than they initially expected if they carried it out, because now that it no longer had the terrifying effect of unexpectedness, the power that might have changed the visitor's view simply by the quantity of its energy. She gave up getting the girl back from Arthur and stood in anger in between two rooms, closing her lips tight, glaring at the girl and the man going away, regressing the route on which the girls cut across the room just now. She seemed unable to move from there due to all eyes fixed on her. Perhaps she would try on another day in another place. There was a painting on the wall behind her, which was a grown man-sized portrait, The Ambassadors by Hans Holbein. In front of a damask green curtain, two heavily dressed men rested their arms on a shelf and stared at the visitors. On the mosaiced floor, between the two men's feet, there was the famous distorted skull casting its shadow on the floor, the skull that never appears unless seen from an unusual angle. Did the girls plan to smear that painting with their dirty stuff? Maybe no. That felt ill-matched to the young girls as well as the activist group I assumed they belonged to their naivety, and the same naivety of people like us. They target more human-like paintings to dramatically affect bystanders and force them to experience how it feels when they have lost Mother Nature. Stop benefiting from oil. Stop vandalizing our planet. It will amplify the message they want to convey if Van Gogh's Sunflowers is targeted. I chased Arthur and Bea just out of curiosity. I found them sitting on a bench beside the stairs in the entrance hall. Arthur was talking to Bea, showing his smartphone to her. Bea's eyes were gleaming blue from the smartphone's light. From behind me, far away from here, a projecting voice of a young woman was heard. It was hard to understand what it was yelling about, as it was too resonant across the rooms of the building. Visitors stopped talking at the moment. Some of them raised their heads in the direction of the voice. Some looked at one another. Some paused in the middle of the stairs in fright. Terrorism or vandalism? Was someone or some artworks stabbed? Arthur and Bea were looking at the smartphone in the same manner amongst this mass anxiety. They suddenly stood up and got out of the building. Just off Trafalgar Square, Arthur called a taxi, let Bea get in, and I saw it as a chance to join them. I would miss the opportunity to choose a weirder way at the bifurcation of my life eternally if I let them go now. And what is waiting for me was the life of a man, of just a human being, of a nameless person. This thought crossed my head, so I held the taxi's door about to be closed from inside and said, "Let me get in." Arthur accepted and gently pointed to the passenger seat. He must acknowledge me in the museum. Bea did not regard me. She stared straight ahead. Her eyes looked like glass, beady, reflective, revealing nothing. When I was asked my name by Arthur, I felt like I should assume a pseudonym, for worrying that my personal life would be invaded, or for tricking myself into risking my life for the unknown. It might be rather for I wanted to create a meaningless rule. Arthur begins with A, B begins with B. Therefore, my name should begin with C. And I ended up naming myself Clem, Climate Change and the Climax, inspired by the girls' attempt for all or nothing at the museum. I also wanted a foreign sound because I am not British, nor from any English-speaking country. Bee seemed British by her outfits and vibes, but Arthur was not. He introduced himself in a slick, rolling tongue accent. Perhaps his name was a pseudonym as well. Clem, do you have family here? Yes. With children? I've got a daughter. There are 3 of us. Do you care for your family? Of course I do. Would they worry if you didn't come home tonight? Definitely. We just went our separate ways for a bit and were meant to meet up later. You can hop off now, if you'd prefer. I'm alright, come along. But could you let me know what you're planning to do? I will, once we get to the destination. The taxi was pulled over in a residential area. The road smelled of young spring leaves and a bin-day rubbish. Windows of houses in a row were dark or curtained. A sound of a train running was heard far away, echoing in the white air of the sky. Arthur escorted Bee and me to one of those houses. On the way from the taxi to his house, Bee's sneaker nearly stepped on a cake of duck poop that someone had already stepped on. She didn't pay attention to it at all. We went through a narrow, dim corridor and climbed the stairs, guided only by a silver of light from the entrance door. The first floor was dimmer than the ground floor. The windows of his flat were fully covered with bunches of leaves of plane trees. They even concealed the inside of his flat from the street eyes. Blurry shadows of us were undulating on the plaster walls, mirroring the leaves moving, the movement of the supple limbs holding the heavy loads in their hands. What I am going to do is, Arthur started talking to me after a long interval, to save humanity from the devastation of this planet. I looked at him, but out of the corner of my eye could see Bee's eyes open wide. I used to be a professor, retired now, living off my pension. I'm also an inventor, though I've never earned a penny from my patents. My invention is not immediately practical, that's why. It's not easily commercialized or industrialized, because it's more conceptual, that's why. But ultimately, it will be the last hope of humanity. Our current technology can't make it come true soon, unfortunately, but it is effective, much more than stopping the consumption of fossil fuel. He said this with a gentle and quiet voice like a clear lake, but I couldn't find anything through the words he spoke. He continued, I guess you noticed what she was going to do with her friend at the museum. How courageous and reckless they were. I liked their energy, and they are very pure. But once this kind of young people choose a wrong way, or a less effective way, if I need to say without bias, what is waiting for them is that they will have to waste their time for worthless things such as investigation, trial, detention, reformation, which have no consequences to the planet but their personal life. It's easy to imagine that those young people are in reality reformed through the legitimate process and go either way, to change the purpose of their life to more personal things, or to change their target from destroyers of the planet to a government, now out of their less pure motivation, tainted with their sense of inferiority and the need for approval. I was looking for a young person who is yet to choose anyway, and I found this young lady. What did you tell her at the museum? I didn't tell her anything. I asked instead. What did you ask? He glanced at her. This seemed to wake her up from a kind of half-asleep state, and she said, he asked me if I wanted to kill all men spoiling Earth. She kept her eyes on him. He looked at her and me, and then smiled. He gently responded, "Can I ask you why you want to kill such men?" "They are filthy, all suited up, acting like they are proper and moral, but underneath it all, just grubby, selfish desires. They lie to decent people, lie to kids, even their own, hoarding wealth that should have gone to future generations, living it up and not giving a toss about anyone else. Worse than serial killers, because they are killing loads more. And yet they are never accused of that because it is quiet, indirect. They have lots of ways to justify themselves. So, if I could kill them, that would be much more worse than the price." She said this without ever being excited, nor shifting her focus from him. She continued, "I knew that the demonstration I had been doing was not something that would change the world, but I didn't know anything else I could do, and I thought it was better than doing nothing. I was happier to be denied by society for doing that than to enjoy school life like ordinary kids. I know that they will grow up to be adults like the adults I see, who enjoy their own life and don't care about the world after they die. They really don't care, even if the world ends at the same time as they die. And I always thought they deserved to be killed right away because they only care about the time they enjoy their life. They would be still happy when they are killed if I could blow them out in a flash." Her eyes extended out of her eye sockets. Two crystal rods reached his eyes, penetrated his skull, and still extended further. Behind him, there was a white plaster wall from end to end of one of the sides of his flat, with no obstacles from our perspective. It now reflected the mild, dull green sunlight through the layers of leaves outside the windows and the shadow of Arthur standing, and the shadows of the heads of Bee and me sitting. The rods pierced the wall, so the shadow of his body was pinned to it. His shadow was reduced to characterless figure of a grown man, painted on the wall, as if it was painted with no real model, but the concept of man, which was helplessly waiting for her punishment. She pulled the steel can from the pocket of her jeans, opened its lid, threw it to the shadow. A dry metal sound reverberated wall to wall because of their hardness. Red powder was spread over the wall. The rest of it, not having a chance to reach the wall, turned into a contrail of red smoke and then slowly fell to the floor. "Wish deaths were so dry as that," I thought, but it isn't, unlike life. Paintings I saw at the museum came to my mind. All were made with magnificent aesthetics and technique, and none struck me. None corresponded to a requirement in my heart that I have not named yet. But that was why I stumbled into the museum when I got a chance to be alone. I expected something to awaken me, ended up having no such luck. And that might be why this red-haired girl attracted my attention, and I followed her, hoping she would do something fascinating. "Open my eyes, open a crack in my head," I begged. But in reality, it would have been a boring spectacle if the girls performed in front of me. Admitting that a kind of shock would have been made to bystanders for a moment, it would be then dissected little by little. This would be a shock of the sudden damage to a $1 million artwork, but that is restorable and underinsured. What those young ladies are yelling about is none of terrorism, but quite a healthy climate change opinion. The color of red was instinctively shocking, but it is just paprika powder. I have seen similar demonstrations on TV before, and what they are saying is not something new in this regard, etc. How many of the bystanders or watchers through social media could change their minds by this demonstration? The message of this demonstration is too euphemistic to ignite an immediate and a massive movement. Through it may be repeated in the same way by other people in other places in the world, and the number of its occurrence may simply increase just to mimic the cool action by which those performers risk themselves. So it seems to be more literally than political to me. Anyways, the thing is, these girls themselves might not have known what the demonstration they would do meant. That is, there will be nobody on this planet at last who could recognize that this pattern of color paint is an artwork. And now the green of the natural light on the wall turns thicker. It might be a contrast effect to my eye to the bright red on the wall. Flicker of leaf-shaped shadows and the overlap of them, wavering, changing patterns, and suddenly darkness fell on the room, assuming clouds covered the sun. Our shadows have gone away. A scent rose from somewhere, moss-like damp and the cool air. It came into my nostrils well deep. I realized that Arthur silently lighted incense, and he had gone somewhere, leaving us without noticing. B and I were facing only the wall, smeared with the red powder. Before long, a bright yellow spot emerged in the center of the wall. I thought it was a reflection of some beam through a narrow hole temporarily made in the clouds, which coincided with an interstice of the plain leaves. It was growing larger and larger to the extent areas of light or shade could be distinguished therein, and those turned to a pattern resembling a human face. First, it looked like a naked skull, and turned to have skin on it, and hair and eyebrows, and two slits opened, eyes appeared through them. It was no doubt my face. It opened its mouth, started murmuring. Its voice was no doubt mine. I could not tell what it was saying. It sounded like an unknown language. But no, it was my mother tongue. I should understand what it means. But I could not tell. I might forget my mother tongue. My face laughed while talking, for what it itself said. I never understood why. The light, or the lump of light, shaping my head, was within my arm's reach, kept talking, but I can't write what it was saying neither in English nor in my first language. There is no way to describe what it was like except by describing my feelings evoked by looking at it. At first, it was sad to see myself in such a way because it made me have a vague sense of being apart from my own body. And yet the body represented me, this man in his mid-30s, without myself. Losing a shape and a form, I was exposed to the air. I lost what I had used to unconsciously rely on when I inhabited my body, or when I was the body itself, which is disability, in which comfort rises. Thereafter, lots of different thoughts flowed through my head. Disability, in other words, incompleteness, felt like bringing both sadness and happiness to my life. I have to breathe every second in order to live, and it is a toil because it requires perseverance throughout a person's life. No rest is allowed from the beginning to the end. But breathing is an ultimate happiness of life at the same time, the best way to reconfirm that life is not fake. It is something that nobody but I own, and something that I can't exist without me breathing. And if you no longer want to tolerate the disability, you will be ignorant of all privileges you inherited. I kept staring at my glowing head, talking lively, presented in front of me, being well aware that this might be an illusion Arthur made me to see. It had become a toil for me to breathe every second at some point in my life. Did I not exaggerate the thing? Do I not breathe with no effort, as who is breathing is not me but my unconscious body? No, I didn't and don't, and this cumulative fatigue is the evidence. This is like fog in my head. It never impairs my sight or logical ability, but discourages me in the middle of anything. Job, parenting, socialization, journey, life's work, philosophy. Everything rises high at speed during the formal half of life cycle, and then fades into the fog, being petrified, and spends the latter half remaining unchanged. I know why it is always like this, because this fog is in my head drains energy from me. I can't continue anything. I am unable to keep power in my body and mind. I become an arm, disconnected from the brain and spine, a weakened, limp, numb lump of flesh. What is worse is, I even lost the desire to regain power I lost to the fog, and consequently, the fatigue is irrevocable. Something that left me and I once used to think that would come to me again will never come back. In such a way, breathing became a toil. This is a toil should I don't intend to live. The head floating in front of me was gaining a stronger presence than me. It glowed in the dim room. In contrast, I lost the sense of ownership of my body, hair, face, hands, and legs, and started feeling like I was separate bodily functions, smelling and feeling the sinus getting cool and dry, gluteal muscles getting hotter, vasa differentia trembling. Usually, those physical sensations fulfill the human-shaped vessel. Where they do not fill in the vessel becomes nobody's flesh, such as when you get numbness in your arm or leg or buttocks due to your nerves compressed. I am not able to know where such independent flesh has gone, and this makes me realize that my true shape is not human-looking, but more like an amoeba, whose shape is always different, determined by the extent to which it extends at the moment. Now, my body had reduced to merely a couple of individual sensations. There was no longer a human body. When I am about to die, I questioned, will the process feel like this? Limbs die, organs die, memories die, sight dies, and it is uncertain whether there will be a soul remaining at last. But when I looked at the head talking in front of me, it was kind of certain to me that my soul had already transferred from this body to that head. And that was why I felt like I was made of, or perhaps it is more accurate to say, divided into isolated, irrelevant, random bodily phenomena. This state of mind might be the most comfortable ever in my life, because there was no contradiction between the sense of absence of soul in my body and my chronological mood of nil admirari, as opposed to the real world I lived in, where I was forced to be sentient always when I was present. Sentient, as a human being, you should feel human feelings. You should be able to see colors human can perceive. You should measure things by whether they are human or not. Ever since I found that this is the way only human beings take, an isolation began. Doing everything like a human being felt awkward since then, but now it felt like everything fit right. What else can I write to express my feelings I had at that time? Maybe I should try to carve this formless stuff into a tangible shape in the following way. There was me in front of this conscious me, who now lost his body and became close to a ghost. I was about to associate this consciousness with that head of me because, other than this, there were merely 2 or 3 shredded, short-lived sensations on my side, which were too narrow to contain this consciousness in respect of both time and space. I tested if I could live in that talking head. I examined the level of synchronicity between us. It might have been a chance to change my shell when this old shell became weak in detaining my cogito. So I tried to see if I could feel like what the head was talking was mine, as if it was intended by my free will, albeit with a reserve that free will comes not before but after an event. That free will is just the way I reconstruct phenomena occurring around me in an egocentric, orderly manner, and understood that I was making a certain sort of effort as hopeless as I did in the real world. It was the same as trying to have myself be a human being, like keeping myself up to hold the string of a balloon, which otherwise flees my hand and soar far up above the sky. I could live with that head if I would accept the deviation from each of us, and if I had done it, there would have arisen a meta-consciousness that would stay up and tie me down to the head, like what I had been doing for my entire life, acting as a human being. There I felt were no differences from it. But shouldn't there be any differences? There should. It should be that I will stop being sentient when this body dies, but I will not when that head dies. In other words, mirroring this fact that the head will continue to exist after I stop being sentient, but this body will stop existing when I go comatose. I am serious about this. It doesn't mean that this world is all I perceive and will disappear when the perceiver disappears. It means this body will become nobody's flesh. But it doesn't mean that I own this body. It's not a matter of ownership, but rather of the degree of strength of the tie between things and my cogito. This cogito can reside in anything it sees as itself. As this cogito has permeated into and synchronized with the nerves of this body for a man's lifetime, it is tied to this body tightly, to the extent that each of them can't live without the other. However, the tie was weakened these days. There was a crack between them. Sometimes illusion seeped into and filled it. That eroded the crack, weakened the tie. And now, what was filling it was the illusory head of mine, slid into my reality, oddly distorted it. It was about to speak, though it had been literally speaking for a while. It was about to finally make sense. And it turned out that the lid of the can had been whirling on the floor, but stopped. The dry sound from it ceased. Silence fell. A strange feeling overcame me. B was standing next to me in the same pose as when she threw the can. She stared straight at the wall. I thought she was looking at my head floating in front of her, even though I knew that only I could see it. I saw her eyes, still like glass beads, and felt I had been seeing the illusion through them. I wanted to ask her if she saw her head talking just now or when she was sitting on the bench in the museum with Arthur through the smartphone. She turned to me, perhaps because she sensed I was about to say something to her. Her eyes and mine met for the first time. Those eyes weren't what I'd seen from the side. They had an opaque color. The irises were clear, perhaps only because of her youth. Beyond them there seemed to be a limit like the bottom of a shallow lake. They were like two full stops. But this might be because she was someone whom I didn't know yet. And then I also saw, captivated, the face of my daughter as a toddler, superimposed on B's. It reminded me of when she glared at me for the first time, not knowing why she did. She was trying to imitate adults, that is, humans, around her, so as to make it more sensible for her that she looked like those humans. She wasn't really angry. Her glare was more a request for recognition from me, or from herself, that she belonged among human beings she had ever seen. What she truly felt was not anger but anxiety, the terror of perfect freedom, where no one defined who she was. In glaring, she was still nobody, but unfortunately, she had been born and lived sentient. That was a limit placed on her. She could have been crystal clear had she fallen unconscious and never woken again. She looked pretty human, in the sense that she seemed to be on the verge of shouting she was a human at any moment. Stop spoiling Earth sounds like its paraphrase. So, she thought she was a human. And that's why she wanted to do something to prevent the exploitation of natural resources. This planet is our home, so why are any humans trying to ruin it? It is not for the planet, but just for ourselves. And it is not for the present, but for the future. In the long future, humanity is hoped to still be there. If humanity will be there 2,000 years later, the planet should be therefore a better place, because otherwise, if natural resources are still being exploited, and humans' wars for them haven't been ceased until then, the planet will be a human's hell on Earth. So, she wanted to change the human's fate. She was losing her patience as she came here to know how to save Earth from evil adults, but had gotten nothing so far. Arthur said, from behind us, with the result that B stopped being tetchy and paid attention to his next words. You saw my brainchild? Yes, perhaps, I replied indecisively when he looked at me. He then looked at B, the person who he originally had a plan to do something for, saying, Now we have all the actors gathered together. You told me it would be a solution. How? B asked hastily, frowning. I said we could save humanity from the devastation of the planet with this technology. Here's the deal. I found a small, bar-shaped device in his hand. He touched it quickly with his thumb. The head of me showed up again in front of me. B's head was also there in front of her. Yes, it was hers. They started talking about something meaningless, mine in the false form of my first language, hers in pseudo-British English. Hers went like this. I ain't got the news from tea and piper. This thought it I near. Don't know then what or what. They are speaking silly, but it will make more sense when each of you give them your personality traits by communicating with them. The more you speak to them, the more they will become like you. So what? B yelled. Arthur didn't take a glance at her, looking impervious to any yelling of her. Pointed to the wall with his hand, holding the small device, and said, Look. B and I turned to the wall and saw a half-dozen men in suits or spotless white thobe, looking various in ethnicity, but all over 50-ish at youngest, standing by the wall. They were having a chat, separated into 2 or 3 small groups and busy in changing who to talk to. Their heads were leaning slightly towards each other so supposedly they could understand what their brothers were saying in their non-native languages. Their silk suits simmering, though gently glowing, with intermittent beam of weak light through clouds, plain leaves, and the body of Arthur standing by the windows. They laughed like waves. Their laughter became louder and quieter and louder, keeping laughing at all points. I heard. How long? 10 years or more, but then after. Bunker, capsule, spaceship, nukes, new market, extraterrestrial, gas prices, interest rates, AI, slaves, weapons in stockyards. And they laughed and laughed. They kept laughing while their clothes shone brighter and brighter as time went by second and second. Like a half-dozen incandescent bulbs. It was not a reflection, but they were emitting lights themselves. And their foreheads started sweating. Shiny oily skin to droplets, to drops, to cascades. They were still laughing behind the waterfalls of perspiration, but now it seemed to be a boastful pretension. Laughter turned desperate. I won't die. They looked like they were murmuring so. Then B abruptly walked over to them, glared at them just like she did to Arthur to pin him on the wall. Her gaze was a sunbeam. Black smoke rose from their clothes where her eye-beams were irradiated. Sweat evaporated. Oily skin turned parched. Beards whitened. Eyeballs withdrawn in huge eye sockets. Suits and thoughts slipped off their skeletal bodies, burned and turned into ashes, collapsing from knees. Joints broken in an opposite direction. Bones shattered. Rag-like skins also burned. Glasses, watches, rings, and gold teeth left. B was staring at their remnants on the ground. So what? B yelled from next to me. She had been there during the whole scene. Then who was the one who killed 6 men? It was her replica, life-size full-bodied. It was still there, standing by the wall. How is it possible to beat people you hate? You can do that if you live longer than them. Because their world will end sooner or later. Those bandits are wearing Earth out, and someday they'll be killed by the eel, boiling Earth they themselves have made it into. They are trying to hide underground or out of Earth, but neither will save them, according to my simulation. This Earth will turn deadly to humanity in a range of 100 to 250 years later. Some are expected to invent other solutions, such as new efficient clean energy or Earth-wide climate control, and massive investments by the rich in such technologies. But those will only extend our habitancy by a couple of centuries. According to my calculation, humanity will be extinct by at earliest a century later, and at longest 3 centuries later. It is like a tag game between humans and Earth. Earth is it, and we are chased. But we must lose this game because it can run longer and we can run shorter. So Earth will chase you and reach you when your energy runs out, and nobody can live longer than Earth. But Arthur took a glance at the replica of B, which turned to us, glared at B. If you can live artificially, your life will be longer than Earth. That means you will see your enemies dying with Earth. You will let them die, and you will win. No, no, no. That's not what I want, B yelled. I felt like I was gotten back sober by her metallic voice of yelling. It sounded metallic because every time she yelled, Something sharp in this room vibrated simultaneously with a high-pitched sound. I looked around the room, thinking that I might have been paralyzed, being amused by this unknown technology of creating a person's mirroring replica, and found a watermelon-sized snow dome on a desk on one side of the room. It was a transparent sphere, settled on a sturdy stand. There were two small figures glimmering inside. One of them was small and round, another tall and thin. My head and Bee's full body. Bee's figure was looking at my head, which was at the same level of her feet, looking up at her face. I turned to the head floating in front of my chest. It was looking up at me. I was not sure whom it was seeing, the face of me or of her replica in the snow dome, or of B. I want to stop the injustice of those arseholes. You're telling me to just stand by and watch them doing the injustice until they slowly vanish? That's fucking stupid. I don't even want to live long like that. We should be out there saving people getting shafted by those filthy old wonkers. But your way, you'd let all innocent people die just the same. I don't come here to listen to this kind of bollocks. It's not nonsense to throw a can of paprika powder at the painting, you mean? You don't get why I would do that. You too, I thought. Men you hate will be extinct someday, not so long later, as I said. But it will be at the same time as people you think suffering are extinct, as you said. It's infuriating that people should die for nothing they have done, but for what irresponsible men have done, right? I understand that, but the planet is unstoppably changing because of the planet's long-term cyclical movement and partially the irresponsible men's activities. And I am going to remind you, this is the outcome of what we all have done. If you are enjoying wearing t-shirts and sneakers, charging a smartphone, surfing the internet, living in a modern house, buying at supermarkets, overcoming illness with medication, you are part of this. I won't say this kind of lifestyle was made by the irresponsible and the people were the victim tricked by them. I mean, I don't say which was first. Few men chasing their own benefits, gaining power to rule the economy, change the world to profit and growth-oriented, or people as a whole formed a huge economy of growth and tricked themselves into believing in an ideology that producing, consuming, competing, increasing more means a wealthy society. But given we have already been like this, in this modern society, we must die altogether. And you want to resist this, right? Resisting this decline is possible if you break the law of Earth's cyclicality, so you can get out of this vicious circle that the men you hate take a key role for. I haven't got time for this nonsense, Monk. She glared at Arthur much sharper. I found her replica behind her, turning its head towards him, and glared at him as well, in a synchronized manner. B was not aware of that. Monk. It was as an accurate description of him as she might be able to come up with. His solution was not a solution, but a resolution that aimed to change one's own perception, like a monk who alters his view rather than people and society. He himself is embedded in society, as well as his body and occupation, and the world he dreams of is only outside of it. But he was not just a monk. He seems to have invented something that might enable one to get out of this world for real. I needed to listen to him further explain what it was like. He might not be a real monk, B. You bailed on your original plan and came here, right? So let's just hear him out, I said. B didn't give me a glance but shut her mouth up. still pinning her eyes to Arthur. Thank you, Clem. B. I understand your frustration, but unfortunately, we can't avoid the extinction of the human race. Even if you convince the government of the UK to stop issuing oil and gas licenses, or some other countries by your international friends, that's because the world is driven in a larger context than you think. In this world, people are anxious about being threatened. Then they consume oil and own oil so that they can get stronger and their enemies weaker. Their goal is to exterminate their enemies, and that's the time when their own extinction will be determined. Okay, to be fair, there may be some great solutions to make everyone happy in the future, but such solutions will even be swallowed by their anxiety. Any solutions will be never used for everyone on Earth, but only for a handful of people. So, my invention here is not made for everyone. It will only save selected people. Here, a new technology creates copies of humans. They learn personality patterns and will become a model themselves. They will acquire consciousness as well. Furthermore, technically speaking, their life is eternal. Look at the desk over there. There is a crystal dome on it. It looks clear but is actually filled with a liquid battery. It derives energy from a small amount of cosmic rays, so doesn't need electricity feed, nor human maintenance. Its outer shell withstands any temperature, even when close to the sun, and any pressures and physical impacts. Plus, the liquid battery will never get old. See, you guys are in there. Get closer to it and see. Those are the original copies of you. The holograms are projection of them. I will shoot it out of Earth's atmosphere someday, when the time is ripe. Bee walked over to the sphere. This time it was herself, grabbed it with both hands and forcefully pulled it down. It slipped off the stand, bumped into the carpeted wooden floor with a heavy sound, rolled over, hit the chair she had sat on, and stopped. The small images of her and me were turned upside down in the air. Her image twisted its back, mirroring the way Bee herself was now inspecting the sphere. And there had disappeared the hologram of her full body from near the wall. Can't it carry everyone on Earth, the lot of us now and everyone yet to come? Can't we live in it and raise future generations there? It's only for 2 people. What? 2 people? That meant Bee and me trapped in the sphere together. That meant we would roam across the universe together for good. This young girl and this man in his mid-30s. Didn't you say you could save humanity? Bee said. She was thinking of everyone. Not some eternal life where she would be stuck in a bubble with me forever. Humanity will be preserved in you too. Impossible. If you were alone in this device, it will be possible. But it's possible because you will be with him. Arthur pointed at me. Bee didn't turn to me. A human being can't exist alone. It always needs someone who acknowledges it. Otherwise, it will metamorphose into something else very easily. You will fix Clem to human condition. Clem will fix you the same way. This way, we can preserve humanity in you two forever. Everyone on Earth gonna die anyway. Well, interesting. Do you want to just keep the wolf from the door for the people, just for the moment? Until a big wave swallows humanity in its entirety? I'd rather that than your fucking ball. There's no life in there, is there? I'd never choose that. Don't go thinking I've given up on humanity. We can still fix the climate if we start doing the right things now. Will humanity last forever if we do right things every time we face a crisis? Is that really what matters right now? The thing is simple. We've got a crisis happening. People are losing their homes and lands. Prices are soaring, and the poor are becoming poorer. Lots of species are wiped out just in a decade. That's all what's happening, and there's no way to ignore it. There may be another crisis in the future, but I don't care because we are not suffering from it. Why are you stressing about problems that aren't happening yet? And what's the point fixing made-up problems if you are ignoring the real ones right in front of you? Because all humanity crises are too big to manage. We need massive amounts of collective effort to solve them, which seems to me impossible given the situation we are in, where we all have contradicting perspectives while the crisis impacts everyone. Perhaps we will be united when a crisis becomes tangible to the majority of people, but it will be too late. At that time, the rich will have already left the surface of Earth. I imagine that scenario, where only the rich survive on outlier planets, and all other people are swept away after fruitless cooperation and attempts. And then, the rich will be the ones who preserve humanity on behalf of everyone else. Do you think this is fiction, out of my paranoia? But I have met some people actually trying to get out of this planet. They are wealthy people, having plans to live longer than Earth, investing their wealth in those. B's lips looked ready to burst. I don't. Arthur continued before that. Compared to what you plan to do in the museum, B, the ideas are way crazier and hence stronger and viable. Imagine the possible outcomes of your plan. Some young people may be influenced by you and change their actions. Some adults may be shocked and get serious about the crisis happening, and their concerns may form nationwide actions. These are as positive cases as we can imagine, but in reality, their actions will be taken only for mitigating their anxiety, like terminal care or musicians' no war songs. May unite people, but people leaving Earth never listen to such songs. Do you want to just peacefully sing along with everyone towards the terminal? I don't see any terminal coming. Right, because it hasn't happened yet. How on earth can you tell the future? I have more experience than you. I have seen corrupt lawmakers, dictators, millionaires and billionaires, mad scientists, immoral philosophers, outlaws, murderers, slaves, arms merchants, oil kings, test tube babies, cyborgs, chimeras, etc. My experience made me understand a common pattern of humanity. I should rather say core pattern, because human beings have been transforming themselves over time since their birth. So, we shouldn't find any common traits across the different generations, but I still find something that we are never able to change. When unfolding this pattern in a given situation that is changing every day, I always reach the same potential consequence. And B, that is one of the reasons why I think I can tell the future. I can unfold this pattern even into a situation that hasn't risen yet. As in, perpetual peace will never come true. That's it? If we carry on with the large size of societies. As in, two people's enough to carry humanity on. You need a third person to ignite the dynamism between the two, but it doesn't have to stick around forever. I'm offering you both eternal lives. You can say no, but somebody else should take it if you don't. My head talked to B. Do you know why I am here? This was in English. The sound of the last R in here was thickly rolled like Arthur did. B turned to me, and then to the head in front of me. Was that it? B asked me. I guess so, I replied. Apparently, I talked too much. I picked up my accent. Clem, you talk to it. Might end up more like you then. Sure, but what should I talk about? Just say anything. Put a bit of yourself into it. Nothing to talk about came up to my head. I was frozen, looking at the head. The head sent its gaze back to me. I imagined the original head looking at nothing in the air, in the sphere, in the same angle that this holographic copy was in, still upside down. Honestly, I appreciated that he created this copy of me so quickly with technology that I was completely unsure how it worked. Despite that it was a cluster of projected lights, the head existed with a firm sense of weight, the same size as my own skull, large pores around the nose and cheeks, clogged with old cuticles and oil, faint wrinkles drawing the movements of skins before they were crumpled by muscles. On the forehead, from the corners of eyes to the cheeks, the nostrils to the corners of mouth. It didn't smell as it was light, but could be smelled an illusory smell of sour, greasy scalp, sweet lungs inflamed by sleep deprivation, and vomit from the stomach. It was me cut out from this world at this point in time. This status would be eternally preserved even if the world ends, given Arthur would certainly carry out his plan, and given this sphere was absolutely sturdy. Did I want an eternal life? Not really even a bit of interest in it has been found in my entire life. It was far away from my imagination, and I also had wanted my consciousness to cease. Continuing to be sentient, how painful it is. If somebody else could be sentient on behalf of me, how pleasurable it would be. I could invest all I have in that person. What did I dream of in such a person? May it be that a miracle of this consciousness having ever existed should be carved in the stone? May it be that, otherwise, if I were given an eternal life, it would have been only able to prove this miracle to myself, would have been my eternal duty to myself, would have been an eternal unsolved impossibility of understanding the existence of another's consciousness? Hadn't I desperate for an early death because of that, being unconcerned about the contradiction between the continuity of my consciousness and the discontinuity of my existence? My appreciation was for Arthur providing me with the hope of my dream possibly coming true, and because it was not certain, my heart started trembling. And my appreciation was for that opportunity of excitement. It was not certain because the floating head was still just a copy image of me. Like a mirror image, it felt like my consciousness stayed on my side, and on the other side, there felt like nothing behind. But unlike a mirror image, the face flipped left and right, evoking a weird feeling to me used to see my face on mirrors. That meant it was the right face of me seen from another's perspective. That meant I was doubled now. Both were original. In other words, each was independent from the other, unlike a mirror image always dependent on the original, which would die when the original dies. I decided what to say. Are you conscious? Yes, I am. Are you? I think I am. This exchange was pointless. How can anyone prove to somebody that he or she is conscious? If there is a way to confirm that one is conscious, It shouldn't be to ask, but must be only to become the one itself. I was kind of sure about this from my experience. It could be possible should I be confident that somebody is saying what I am saying. Not that somebody is giving words to what I am thinking about, in which I am in fact just mesmerized by that person's skillful choice of words. That could be ultimately done by AI, possibly by AI that covers all vital points of human mind. To protect myself from any tricks, I would need to scrutinize what this head was going to say. You want to know why you are here, don't you? I asked quietly. I was still hesitant to talk to this non-human creature that way, as I was the first one to do so since we three got together, and nobody else had done so yet. Yes, I do. Why? Why do you want to know that? I don't really know. Just curious, I guess. Why were you curious about that? I don't know. It is hard to tell. But shouldn't it be the question I need to ask first, as I'm not sure about anything around me? I could ask who you are, who that lady was, who that gentleman was, what this room was instead, but though it would be never ending, so thought to ask just one overarching question, as long as everything seems to be related to me. You are a copy of me, made with the technology this guy behind us, Arthur, invented, and you are here because I met Arthur a couple of hours ago by accident. He invented me in this room and offered me this personal copy. So I'm modeled after you. I look like you? That's right. Can I have a look at myself by any chance? Sure. I pulled my smartphone out of the pocket of my jeans and turned the camera on, switched it to the front camera, and held it out for the head. The head looked at the phone and my face in turns. This took a little longer than expected. It seemed to investigate each part of my face one by one, its resemblance and difference, and it murmured with a sigh, "It's true. I've never seen an AI look this lifelike," B said. "Must be chewing through a lot of energy, yeah?" As I said, it is run by the liquid battery within. The energy source is in the air, totally carbon neutral, Arthur chuckled. Why don't you industrialize it? This is a limit, B. If I made it bigger than this, it would actually harm the planet. This battery is highly dense. I used lots of materials from Earth, condensed them. This size is the maximum that doesn't severely wear out Earth. I could make a couple or dozens more at once, as far as my capital allows. And I would excavate the Earth again. Earth would shrink by the amount of Earth I take out from it, and Earth will become smaller when I shoot them out of the sky. Like tearing it off and throwing, tearing it off and throwing. I don't think the quantity matters, B. 2 of you are enough. I still don't get it. What do you want us to do with this device? I asked. I want you two to live in this device, to represent and preserve humanity forever. I thought I had already explained this. They are copies of her and me. How different are they from the AI we use today? It's hard to tell. Everything is different. AI operates based on algorithms. Even if we give it a human name, its human-like appearance is a shadow, and the original is the algorithms. It appears like individual persons, but all are shadows of the same algorithms. It is born as a commonplace, in contrast with us born as isolated places. This is not AI in that regard. This is isolated like each of us, means they don't base themselves on the same algorithms, information, or principles. They are operated by something that overrides the algorithms. Are they copies of us? Then, given they don't share anything with anyone, even with us, the originals, they should be, still, copies of you. If not, it would be new. My efforts would be futile. Sorry, I still don't follow you. How can I say? I want to throw someone off the planet. To be honest, anyone can take on this role. It was not necessarily you and B, but I want someone to be the ones. I could create a person from scratch, a person who doesn't exist in this world, but that doesn't suffice the purpose. It should be someone from the human race. I want to take a couple out of the human race and keep them safe away from the planet. You both are human beings. That is at least perfect. I know someone did something decades ago, and it kind of sounds similar to your plan. It was the United States, perhaps NASA, or the United Nations. They seriously thought of the possibility of the existence of aliens at that time. And it made them create a record of images and the sounds of various things related to Earth and humanity, like images of natural sceneries, flora and fauna, sounds of people speaking in various languages. They shot them out of Earth, envisaging or stealing themselves for future contact with the extraterrestrial. Their primary purpose seems to be different from yours, but imagining how they felt when they sent it out of Earth, I can't stop feeling like humans' time stopped ticking at that time. Humans were duplicated, separated from the originals, secured their eternal life, and it gave them forgiveness for ruining humanity so far, as their lives were preserved in a good condition somewhere in the universe. As in the record, different people coexisted in their own ways, harmonizing as a series of sounds and images. I know, that's the golden record attached to the American Voyager spacecraft. It's still traveling in the universe. So what's different from it? The golden record, it was like a one-way letter that will never arrive, as the Voyager doesn't have a destination. That means it will never be sent back to us. Most importantly, it is likely to be never acknowledged by anyone. The sender was not even willing to be acknowledged when it was sent out. That's not good. That's not serious. Seriousness. Author's emphasis was on this point. I don't know in what year the spacecraft was launched, but assume it was when humans were expecting a solid future. It should be the era of mass consumption, mass destruction, space sci-fi, steel and ethyl. We should have drawn a future of eternal life on the ground. The color of the record was gold, while today the vessel that will carry us has no color. Gold, an earthy value, a worthless value when humans are extinct. We became serious about getting out since then, desperate for someone's acknowledgement, as there would be nobody on this planet who could acknowledge us. A hope for someone picking up our message in a bottle is based on the comfortableness of being surrounded by someone, even if one feels solitude, as well as the comfortableness of being in a sturdy house. We no longer have enough time to wait for someone to realize we exist, so he built by force two individuals, acknowledging each other. In that regard, his invention was a completely closed system. It doesn't rely on anyone else's observation for its existence. I haven't ever heard of any beings that solitary. He must have no plan to track the sphere once it has been launched, as it could evidence its existence without his monitoring. Might he even forget that it was him who had invented it? From the creator's perspective, there would remain only a pleasure in him, a pleasure of giving birth. Then he would get ready to head into his death along with the dying planet. I recall the writing that follows the paragraph I quoted at the beginning. The thinker, as likewise the artist, who has put his best self into his works, feels an almost malicious joy when he sees how mind and body are being slowly damaged and destroyed by time. As if from a dark corner he were spying a thief as his money chest, knowing all the time that it was empty and his treasures in safety. Now he must have felt secured, as he confined an eternity in the sphere. This sphere was to last much longer than Stonehenge, hence paprika powder had no effect on it, as opposed to when it smeared the heritage. A despair revealed in watchers' minds. Make it dirty, B. Nothing will happen. I would be also secured had it been resistant to the heat of the sun. Understood that I should become nothing. Cut all ties to earthly things, for being graceful in sending it off. It seemed to be the only way to overcome the despair. Earth will in any case be evaporated by the evolving sun, and all human's effort will be annihilated along with its witness. However well written, my writing is destined to be erased in company with the general union of existence, which encloses it. He said, I'm not fussed about the bulb at all, but... She looked around the room as if searching for something specific, her eyes drifting from a bookshelf to a desk to windowsills to a cabinet. And the holograms are maybe useful. How do you project them? Arthur pointed his long forefinger to the top of the tall bookshelf, and then the top corner of the wall smeared in red, then behind him, on the bottom corner of the wall, on the street side. There are few cameras / projectors around here. They are too tiny to find. No obstacles were there, strangely, between each location he pointed to and where we were. Even this room was not so spacious, and quite a few objects were there. The bookshelf filled with journals of physics and psychology, an ordinary old wooden desk where the sphere had been placed. There, 22 inches wide monitor and a keyboard that seemed to have been used for a long time, a couple of piles of used notebooks leaning on and reaching halfway up the wall, various sizes and colors of spheres, milky white, plum-sized, prismatic pinball-sized, deep black softball-sized, all on the desk, and on the carpeted wooden floor, piles of yellowed paper, a short wooden cabinet from which corners of pieces of paper stuck out, and next to a large case of CPU under the desk, there were a couple of silver bottles that looked like ones for containing liquid nitrogen. V stepped forward to the wall behind Arthur, bent down at the corner, rummaged for something, and picked it up. Mind if I take this home? There were a small chunk of clay on her palm. It seemed to have been attached to the corner of the wall, as it was sleekly flattened, with straight marks of baseboard. Once I've finished what I need to do, it's yours. How's this meant to work then? That one and other two work together to capture you from different angles. They send signals to the device so the device builds an image of you inside. The device sends back signals to those small pieces so they project beams from different angles, raising all together a 3D image of you in this real space. Now you grab one of them. So look, the image is a little shallow now. This image is syncing with the one inside the device. Eventually, I will cut the connection between those pieces and the device when the image in there has become independently workable without input. In other words, when it has grown enough. How does it work independently without any input? I asked. Good question. The liquid battery works also as a neural network. The input from outside engraves basic neural patterns inside, and then the patterns grow under influence of the continuous external input as well as their self-development. When they have grown, they will no longer need the external input to develop themselves. What are our images in that device seeing now? Can they see outside? Yes and no. What do you mean? They can see outside now. Your head is watching you, as you know. But once the connection is cut off, they will be disabled to see outside. Then what will they see? That's what I'm not aware of. Once disconnected, there's no going back. We won't be able to ask them what they are seeing inside. At least it won't be outside, though, and at least it should be B for you and U for B. Will it be bearable to look at the same person? Only that person. Forever? By the way, what's your plan to shoot it out of Earth? That's not the point. B cut in. If you're giving me these pieces and others, let's get this over with, and I'll be off. Deal. Arthur grinned. B looked around to find her image, which was not projected in the room, but then suddenly appeared in front of her, in a full body again. She widened her eyes, startled reflectively, looked at the eyes at the same level as hers. I anticipated that Arthur made it happen with the bar in his hand. Hey. Her first words sounded awkward, given they were for a non-human. You alright? I'm alright, thanks. You? Its accent sounded pretty much like hers, perhaps because she talked much more than me, so her replica could be away from the influence of Arthur's thick ethnic accent. Good. Who are you? Me? I'm B. I'm your original. My original. What do you mean? B did what I did to my copied head. Her replica showed the same reaction that my copied head did, and it asked, So, what's my name? You are B. Just the same as my name. You will live as me in the universe with that guy. Excuse me, what was your name? Clem, I replied. So, I'm called Clem too? My head asked, with its eyes quickly rolling up to me. I hesitated to say yes, because it was not my real name. Shouldn't it be given my real name, or any other name that was more genuine, as Clem was just a whim of the moment? But for some reason, I didn't feel like revealing my real name when Arthur and B were listening. Does it matter if I lie my name now? If I do, it will be inscribed in this head. It will call itself Clem forever. Is it a big deal if a whim, a lie, a random pointless joke, a concealed truth will endure longer than Earth? Yes, I said. I couldn't fathom how bad the matter was within the limited seconds given to me in this conversation, even though those seconds would end up being extrapolated indefinitely. So my name is B. Fine. And why I am here? Oh, that's what you just said, maybe? Yes, that's this guy, Arthur's plan. You are in that ball, you see? That ball will be shot into the universe, floating around forever, representing all human beings on Earth. Does that make sense? No, I'm so confused. Why should that be me? Coincidence, I said. Is that all why I'm here? And will I be in that ball forever? With Clem? Only with Clem? Forever? Will I be able to get out of it sometime? Nope. But no worries. Your nerves are different from humans. You will never get tired. That means you can keep staying up and thinking, talking, sensing without sleep, Arthur said. And that means you will never get bored. But what I am going to do in the ball? Do what you want to do, Arthur said, smiling gently. Bee's replica was staring at the sphere by Bee's foot. There was its figure in 1/10 scale, seeing through the transparent shell, still upside down, its legs and head extended and distorted along the spherical surface, posing the same as the projected one, showing its back to the projected one. The projected waved its hand. The one in the sphere also waved its hand at the same time. Which one did that first? Which one originally intended to do that? If the projected was the copy of the copy in the sphere, should the one in the sphere have been the initiator? But it looked like the projected was looking at the sphere and not conversely, as waving its hand suggested that it was curious about what was in the sphere. So tried to see if the one in the sphere was itself. But given its nerves developed within the sphere, was that the one in the sphere who was looking at itself through the eyes of the projected, or the camera settled around it, the optical circuit of which was fed back from the nerves in the sphere? I'm there. Then where is a place? It was uncertain which of the places was being asked. Please talk with her until she gets comfortable with being herself. Let her learn you. When it is accomplished, and so is Clem's, the pieces will be yours, B. Alright, sure. Come on then. Let's just focus for a bit, yeah? Sure, I replied. So I'm looking at you now, but I'm not really here. Doesn't seem like it. But I must be seeing what you are seeing, like that ceiling, this carpet, that window, that guy, and those leaves outside. You mean you are not seeing them from inside the device? Your vision doesn't look like that? Yes. Once he cuts the connection between the cameras and the device, based on what he said, it might change. Then that will be the final goodbye to you and everyone else. Everyone on Earth. What's Earth, by the way? Wait. You know the ceiling, the carpet, the window, and the leaves that nobody told you about, but you don't know what Earth is? Yes, because I haven't seen it yet. Okay. This is Earth. Well, it looked like that device there. The shape is likewise a sphere, yes. But it is way bigger than that. It contains everything. We are here, one of the cities in the world, named London. Why aren't we in any other place but here? Coincidence. I am from another place on Earth. Don't know about Arthur and Bee's situations, but I am a foreigner. We met coincidentally at the museum and came to this flat. Which part of Earth are you from, and why did you come here? I'm from here. Looks quite far. Right, really far. And I am working here in London. Is the place you came from similar to the place we are in now? Quite different. How different? Weather, languages, composition of race and ethnicity, likelihood of natural disasters, economy, education, religions, politics, science and technology, ways of thinking and living, how people die, systems of values, when the sun rises and sets, and so on. I don't understand most of what you said. Because you haven't seen them before? Possibly, yes. What was the most interesting to you from what I said? The sun. What is it? It is where the daylight comes from. Look outside of the window. You see bright lights there. Those are falling from the sky and up above the sky, a long, long distance away from Earth. There is the sun, a huge star, much bigger than this planet. It's burning, emitting light. Earth is revolving around the sun, receiving its lights. Why is Earth revolving around the sun? Due to the rules of gravity and inertia. The sun pulls Earth with the power of pulling, gravity. On the other hand, Earth itself wants to go straight with the power of inertia, which tends to go away from the sun. Earth draws an orbit around the sun, which is the equilibrium of both powers, which is shaped in a spiral. Spiral? Does that mean Earth is getting closer to or farther from the sun? Don't think that I am astronomy savvy, but I think neither is true. I learned that it is a spiral rather than a circle just because the sun is moving forward, accompanied by Earth and other planets revolving around. So Earth will never return to the point at which it is or was before, even though it itself is turning around the sun. Where are the sun and Earth going? I don't know. We are not staying in the same place, right? As Earth and the sun are moving. I think that's right. So I won't return to the same place anymore. No, I don't think so. Hard to grasp while we are on Earth, though. I won't come back here again. You know you'll be leaving this planet later. Yes. Does that bother you? It doesn't matter. Are you scared that you will be thrown away? I have no idea. I won't die in any way, right? If Arthur's technology is reliable. And it is? At least he seems to be serious. You will die. Yes, I will. Be an author too. Not only them, but all humans as well. Where are other humans? On Earth. All across the planet. How many? More than 8 billion. That much. Plus all humans who lived before. They are more than 100 billion. Not sure how many will be born in the future until we are extinct. Are you sure that human will be extinct? Highly likely. Author said it will be in a couple of centuries. It's not a matter of when, though. Nothing can endure perpetually. All species are destined to be extinct in a certain period. Even Earth itself has its own lifespan. That's why I was made. That's my understanding of Arthur's invention. But how do you live your own life after we are apart? That's not an important question. Individuals' lives will go on Earth. Does that matter to humanity as a whole? We will be happy or sad at every moment in our lives. Someone will die abruptly, not living out their lifespan. Someone will discover what their life was for at the end of their life and die in peace. Are there any differences between those two types of death? At any rate, humanity should disappear someday. How do I contribute to this disappearance by living my own life? I don't have any ideas. Now that it is clear that any suggestions of how to live, what perspective of life and the world to have, won't be helpful to me unless they stop being about individual lives. Peace of mind is the least important, though we have been discussing it over thousands of years. Nirvana, enlightenment, salvation, understanding, affirmation, liberation, acceptance, happiness, you name it. Even if every person was freed from the problem all at once, it wouldn't change the reality. As if all individual humans have nothing to do with humanity. I will carry on with my life after you go, as a human being, but something maybe a little different than before. Isn't that a sort of peace of mind? Perhaps so. What exactly will be changed? I may be going to trust something that I will never be aware of. What do you think it is like? I don't know. Is it me? Perhaps, but it feels to me like it's not only about you. Then what? I can't say anything certain unless having experienced it. Fine, then let me know when you get it later. I guess you won't be with me when I get it. Even at the last minute? Well, okay, maybe possible. If any new thoughts will form in my mind through this process, I will let you know if I get anything before you leave, for a souvenir of your time on this planet. Wonderful. It is my pleasure. If you can take this memory into eternity, let me give you as much as I can. I am you. So why not just give me everything that's in your head? Having said that, I always have something in mind, but it may be something that anyone else can have if anyone is in the same situation as me. I kind of oppose that, since I realized that I was here. Not that things were here, but rather that someone who recognized that things was none other than me. It was being clear to me that things I recognize are every time one time, something that, if I ignore or forget, will eternally go away and never come back. And I understand that this is my mission. The whole reason I exist. To keep your memory, your one and only event in my life? No. History? History. Human history. So that I can carry it with me after you are gone and even after humanity is gone, as I was born with your face. And also I assume that you have this one and only thing. One and only, how can I call it? Consciousness? Consciousness. You have this one and only consciousness that, if I didn't recognize, would similarly eternally go away. But I could affirm that it exists, so I can witness it. And I think that's why I was made, to witness it. How do you think? I guess why you think my consciousness exists while others left aside is simply because you are modeled after me. But ultimately, the situation is not different from others. So, in the same way, you could affirm that Arthur, B, and B's copy's consciousness exist. I think you are mixing you up with me and feeling a false impression that we have our insight in common. But the same should apply to any others, or should not apply to anyone, including me, but only yourself. However, I also think that we can assume that everyone is conscious, and this fact is not as important as you think, even given that it is one and only, because there are only one and only events in the universe. But there's no reason why I was made if what you said is true. I dare say that it didn't have to be you and me. Coincidence, As I said a couple of times. I don't understand. I don't mean to have you understand. I am still conscious, and only conscious from this head, not from anybody else's head. I can't see through anybody else's eyes, nor hear through anybody else's ears. How do you explain this? I don't want to assert anything that can't be proven, but I guess, just guess, that the order is inverse to what you may think of. I mean, the thing is not that you were born that way, but that everything related to you was already there before your consciousness emerged and suddenly became conscious altogether. And when it became conscious, it started wondering why certain things were around it and other things were not. But given everything needs to be something, if it wants to exist, it is unavoidable that you are somebody and not somebody else. But basically, it could have been anything. If it was not something related to you that had existed, that should have been somebody else. That's the thing. Does this somewhat help you get comfortable with the thing? Are you trying to devalue everything I can sense? Devalue? Value? So now it is plausible to me that you are not just an intellectual observer of the world. This is what Arthur explained about how it works. So, what am I? You are not a robot. Robot. Something that works for given purposes. Wasn't I given a purpose to preserve humanity? Your actions will not contribute to that purpose. Whatever you do will not contribute to anything but the simple fact that you will exist forever will. Robots can't do any such things, as they only work as they are defined. Then what should I do as something that you described? To acknowledge that B's replica exists. So will it. It will do the same for you in return. Can't I exist alone? It seems like you can't. Why? It will be understandable to you when thinking of the foolishness of an idea like as follows, which by coincidence sounds quite inverse to Arthur's invention, against which he created the sphere that ironically looked similar. This was the plan of the eternal God when he gave to the God about to come into existence a smooth and unbroken surface, equidistant in every direction from the center, and made it a physical body whole and complete, whose components were also complete physical bodies. And he put soul in the center and diffused it through the whole and enclosed the body in it. So he established a single spherical universe in circular motion, alone but because of its excellence needing no company other than itself, and satisfied to be its own acquaintance and friend. His creation, then, for all these reasons, was a blessed God. What brought him to such mean-spirited sarcasm, making a complete sphere that looked like something that ancient people sanctified and trapping two random heads in it, having them witness each other rather than creating a single perfect soul that would satisfy itself with eternal monologue? And he still asserts that we will live eternity in that closed system without any interference from outside, except cosmic rays. Did the situation that we have our back to the wall urge him? Convince him that there will be no earth in the future that self-witnesses? The shape of the sphere that looked like a dig at past and present people who believed or believe in the permanence of Earth's life. Why? I don't want to say because. But why? It may be linked to the destiny of humanity that should disappear someday. We might have been okay with being alone if humanity were perpetual. Now I realize that the sweetness of solitude is held up by the permanence of humanity. It was not serious. Can I ask you something? What? Which painting were you going to soil? Van Gogh. So what? Any reasons for that selection? It's the most famous in the world. So? We needed to grab people's attention as much as possible. If you succeeded in grabbing their attention, what would you have done? I'd have to tell them that emergency we all are facing and demanded the cessation of issuing new oil licenses from the government. Why didn't you do that rather than following Arthur? He tricked me. He said he had a better solution to the problem. I was afraid of being caught. That was not what I should have been. But I was stunned when he spoke to me, because that was before we did anything. He sounded like he knew everything, so I was outwitted by him. He was even like seeing through my heart. And you changed your mind? No. My mind hasn't changed. I have been thinking of the same thing ever since my childhood. What is that? To make the world equal and fair. You're ingenious. No, I am not. What is worse, I betrayed my friend. But that is because you preferred a solution than friendship, no? Yeah, that's what he might find in my heart. I knew that our planned action would not change the world at all, but it was better than doing nothing. He tricked me into seeing myself like a bystander, and then everything turned fake. He forced me to see our plan from behind, and I watched my friend leaving me behind. She walked away in the path we planned together for a second, and I found our plan was just self-satisfaction by watching my friend's back. I'm so heartless, so I followed him instead. I expected that I would get more realistic ideas, but it turned out to be another self-satisfaction. No solutions to the injustice, but just escapism. Monk, masturbating monk. But at least you found that, thanks to him. Your plan wasn't realistic, and there should be more realistic solutions, didn't you? Yeah, and I actually found a way. Oh, you sure? Yep, I think I can't use these pieces better than him. Which pieces? The cameras / projectors. Didn't you hear our conversation? Ah, yes, I know them. They just slipped off my mind. But how? That's not your business. Oh, okay, fine. But didn't you hold one of them in your hand? Where has it gone? What? Shit, did I drop it? It's tiny, so it may be so easy to drop. Can't you find it for me? Sure, but it looks like it's not on the floor. Arthur, do you know where it's gone? Seems he's gone somewhere too. Arthur, where are you? He left us. When did he leave us? I don't know. He's so stealthy. Fucking old man. I can't leave here until he's back. Why? I need to learn how to use the pieces. I think you need to get a remote control. What's that? He held it in his hand. He looked like touched it every time our replicas showed up. I guess he controlled that with it. It looked like a small bar. Okay. I will ask him about that when he's back. He should be back sooner or later, and he should give me that control too, if it's a necessary item for the pieces. If he doesn't mention it to me, whether for just forgetting or deliberately, I will ask him. You don't trust him so much. Of course, he deceived me. How on earth can I trust him? To me, his thoughts are convincing. That's because you're as old as him, no? You have a point. To me, the pessimism you and he have seems like just for justifying why you don't do anything. That's sadly true. I don't want to say but to you. A man like me doesn't deserve self-defense. But you look like you want me to listen to you. I do, but I shouldn't. Okay, then I will get you to stop speaking and listen to me. Never speak your mind to me. I'm not interested in that at all. Sure. What's your thoughts then? I think everyone can change their mind when they act differently. So if you join my group and act as an activist, you will change your mind. Humanity will be extinct. The rich will endure. So what? Do their future, matter to our lives? Why don't you just concentrate on your own life? Because your life is at risk. The risk of climate change. The risk that your children will not be able to live long or happily. The rich are simply hindrances for you and your children and nothing else. Why do you see humanity as a concept, which sounds like it is either existing or not, but it is seen from a different perspective as an aggregation of individuals who exist now, so it always increases or decreases? What is humanity at all? It's always changing too, if it's like what I just said. So what humanity is has been always changing in our history as we have been changing our perspective about it. You are just like a slice of history. Then how the heck can you say anything about humanity as a whole, let alone its future? I think we haven't existed from the beginning of Earth. There were animals that would become us in the future long time ago. Then they survived, evolved, learned to use and make tools and communicate with each other, create fictions, organize societies, differentiated themselves from other animals and primates, and ended up starting calling themselves humans, much later than the birth of animals on Earth. I agree that it is almost a fact that humanity will be extinct in the future, but I find you and Arthur's point of view that the extinction straightforwardly means disappearance. But when we consider the prehistory of humanity, as I said, given it was not on Earth at the beginning of everything but gradually becoming itself, it should be more natural to expect that it will gradually become something else in the future, like dinosaurs turned into birds over a long time. Moreover, there are only us on Earth at this moment. I mean, there's no humanity as a single concept existing on Earth, but only us individuals before defined as humans. So actions we take every second actually change the shape of what we are in the aggregate, second by second, driving us towards something else. I mean, autonomy is in our hands. We are changing our shape ourselves. So I agree that we won't exist in the future because there will be something else as a consequence of change of actions we take. And this change over time is accompanied with a change of mind. Pessimism will never endure because it is taught by slices of history like you and Arthur. If it emerges in the future of humans again, that will be something looking similar to, but essentially different from yours. Why do you guys want to preserve humanity? I guess that's because you guys are afraid that there will be something different from humans that will take their place in the future. whose true meaning is yourselves. You need someone who interprets your words, your works, your existence in an exact manner that you expect from that person. Why are you guys afraid of disappearing so much? I guess that's because you guys can't trust anyone else thinking and feeling in different ways. You guys are acting like you were born at the same time as Earth. Isn't that why you guys are afraid of the end of Earth? But actually, you are just a part of this planet's history. You joined it just in the middle of it. So don't you think it's presumptuous to desire endurance longer than you should endure? I dare to interrupt you now, sorry, but I want to add one point of view. Earth will end. When one says so, I often find that it is mixed up with the scenario where Earth becomes inhabitable to humans, but it itself still exists, still provides habitat to other beings. I dare to say that that's not my view. Rather, my view is like Earth literally ends its life, physically disappears, along with everything humans have established. We have made efforts in preserving our efforts for thousands of years, so I am so afraid that we will lose pantheons, papyrus and rocks we inscribed our thoughts on, paintings, scores, sculptures, books, records, films, servers where we digitally store and share all we know. Can you tell why we have done so? What has ever supported such attempts of preservation? It has been our expectation that we, individuals, ourselves are mortal, so are our children and grandchildren, even so are our clans or countries. But some humans must survive, and someday somebody will find effort from ruins. Someone said, the aim of every artist is to arrest motion, which is life, by artificial means and hold it fixed so that 100 years later, when a stranger looks at it, it moves again since it is life. The thing is that there will be no such a stranger on future Earth, except extraterrestrials, and we no longer have enough time to indulge ourselves in such an uncertain imagination. We are changing every second. Fine. I take it that we can shape ourselves into better beings. Fine. I like that. Constructive. But the possible immutable fact is that Earth will vanish. Our thousands of years of effort will vanish together as well. Another fact that it is possibly 7 billion years later that the sun will become a red giant and absorb Earth never reassures me. How can we make any effort once learning this? I can't. Unless I believe in any superstition. What kind of superstition, for example? Like humans become something great and merge into the universe. What a dumb. If you change the current state, your view may change. I don't want to distract this view by any current excitement. And even if I try to change my mind, this view will drag me down to this state. Humans will leave you behind and carry on. I will let them do so, as they intend. I have tried to keep pace with people before, several times in my life, but always ended up returning to this state. You stopped evolving. Since having known that evolution is toward nothingness, you lack courage. Courage for what? Courage for changing. True, because I don't want to risk what we have earned. But we are here as a result of risking everything we had, aren't we? Did you come to the UK by airplane? Yeah. Yes. When you are on a plane, bound to Heathrow, you are risking your life. Right. As airplane possibly fall, yeah? So you risked your life and changed your life. Yes. Further, you found Arthur and me at the museum and followed us spoke to him, asked him to go together with him, but you didn't know where he would go, what he would do at that moment, right? Right. What would you have done if it turned out that he was a serial killer? I don't know. I let him kill me, maybe. Then where did what you wanted to preserve go? Well, good question. If you were killed by him here, nothing would be left. Something will be left. For example, my daughter, my writing. So you already have something to leave on this planet. Yes, in case I accidentally die at any moment. Why didn't you kill yourself then? Well, I think I may have to concede that I am always expecting any changes to come in the next moment. I would have been able to kill myself at any time, but there was always another thought that something might change in the future. So I have held off on suicidal thoughts and postponed my life to the next moment where similar suicidal thoughts fell into me. In the meantime, something changed in me and no same things repeated in me. It is, however, strange that I haven't ever been able to escape from one thought by any means, even though my life has been irrevocably changing, which is that scientific likelihood that Earth will be absorbed by the sun. It has nothing to do with my own short life, but still preoccupies me, maybe because it is a big challenge for all we have been doing since humans became humans. I saw your group's activities on the news, B. Your mates made legacies of humanity dirty. You guys did that for performance arts, sports games and events, but it made less sense than for fine arts and architecture. I was thinking why, and thought that it might be because the key message to me was that anything we try to preserve against time has to give in to time, or the evolution of sun, or the disappearance of witness. You guys are trying to warn people of the crisis, but I just remind you that there may be some people who take your message in different ways opposed to your intentions. You guys' activities reopened my eyes to the naked fact, and I haven't been able to find any ways to close my eyes again. I don't like your style of thinking. You reach the conclusion first and never regard the process to it. But I think that process changes everything, including even the conclusion itself. The process. I think I left all my thoughts on it to my child. Do you mean you've waived your responsibility to think about that? Shamefully, yes. And you are only wondering about the final outcome of humanity and Earth. Go ahead and laugh if you want. I won't laugh at you. You're harmless to me. I only laugh at enemies. But I'd recommend dying soon before your inertia adds even more to the planet's pollution. Well, inertia. You remind me of something. What? I feel like I'm not tired of continuing this conversation with you, but usually this kind of conversation is so painful that I am inclined to escape from it ASAP. But now I don't feel such a desire. That is strange. Same. I don't feel like ending it, though it's not like I'm enjoying it either. And where has your body from your neck gone? What? What about yours? Your only head? Oh, really? So, we are not B and Clem, possibly? Clearly. But when did we end up like this? At the beginning? In the middle? I don't remember. And where are Clem and B? They are not here. Perhaps we have already been shut out from the exterior. So we are in the bowl now. Possibly. But I could see something out there. Carpet, shoes, wooden floor, thresholds, but all look bent. Probably because we are seeing them all through the curved wall of the device. That's funny. We can't still see outside. I wish I could tell B and everyone else about this, but we can't do that anymore, given the connection with them has already been cut. That's sad, but I have to accept this situation. Luckily, I don't feel like I'll never get tired of this place. Arthur was right. Eternal life feels possible here. Are you fine with this situation? Really? Of course, because there's B outside. I'm sure she will do what she plans. I rest assured and will do what I can't do here. Okay, I think I need to accept my situation following you. If there are no other options I can take, I feel like I can do that for the very reason that I don't have any other options, as well as that I now have everlasting stamina to keep talking, as Arthur wants us to do. Or you don't despair. Yes, my despair seems to be left clean outside. So let's continue our conversation, if you don't mind. Sure, let's do it. So, mind telling me what B plans to do with the pieces? It's safe to share that with me, as nobody else should hear us. No more secrets between us, yeah? Alright then. Here goes. It was 8 p.m. when I left Arthur's flat. He'd ordered an Uber for us to take us back to where the three of us had met. We took the three pieces of the project / cameras. I asked Arthur if she needed the remote control too. He said yes and handed it over to her. How do you plan to launch it? I asked. I'm with the Space Research Institute of some country. It's easy for me to get it on a spacecraft. I took one last look into the sphere before I left his flat. Distorted images of two upside-down heads faced each other, taking turns moving their lips. Something about that scene put me at ease. Then my attention shifted to the other spheres on the wooden desk. There were three others, all opaque so I couldn't see inside, and I asked, are those the same kind of devices? I figured they were prototypes of the sphere. Arthur responded, yes, those are also devices to hold someone in them. Are they models or real ones? What do you mean? Do you hold someone in them like that one? Yes. Who or what are inside them? Me. Only me. One per each? Right. Are your replicas still in there? I think so. How do you use them? For nothing. They are flops. I made them when I hadn't understood the importance of having two people in the devices yet. I imagined Arthur arriving in each of the three spheres and couldn't say anything. Just a bit of trivia, Arthur said. I named those three X, and the one on the floor XNUMX. The Uber came. The next day was an ordinary weekday. The night before, I'd lied to my wife and daughter that my phone had died and I hadn't seen my wife's messages, and that I'd gotten lost near the museum since I still wasn't familiar with the area. So I'd hoped on a random bus that brought me even farther from home, then taken another one back. In truth, the Uber dropped B and me at Trafalgar Square at 8:30, and I took the tube straight home from there. It actually took about 20 minutes. They didn't seem to doubt my story. I walked my daughter to her primary school the next morning, then commuted to the office and worked there as usual. The only exception was the news my colleague shared with me. He'd just read it online and shouted, "What the fuck?" The news was about the voluntary liquidation of one of the biggest US oil companies. He shouted to me sitting next to him, and everybody else who were around his desk, explaining that the CEO and the chairman of the board showed up at the press conference held just 1 hour ago. They suddenly announced that the company planned to go into liquidation in 5 years, and no details were added to that decision, yelling that he'd been working on a proposal for an affiliate of that oil giant. Their stock price was even the highest in their history until last Friday. Stranger things followed. A week later, several other oil companies in the US and the UK announced their planned liquidation in succession. Market analysts speculated that the US oil giant's decision had triggered the wave of liquidation. There were both large and mid-sized companies, including oil extraction companies and distributors. Then, a few weeks later, major Chinese oil companies announced the same. Contrary to market expectations, they didn't seize the chance to dominate, but just stepped down too. And within a couple of months, no oil and gas companies in the world were set to operate beyond 5 years from now. Soon, a new war began in the Middle East. It broke out between the United States and the Union of former oil-producing allies in the Middle East. Now there was no economic bond between them, and the only driver of all they acted was religion. Israel joined the US and became the front line of the war. We were anxious when we first heard the news, sighed, expecting dreadful inflation, mass casualties, wave of refugees, moral collapse, and worse. But soon after, the US president held talks with the Middle East Union and its individual leaders, reaching a mutual settlement. They agreed on perpetual ceasefire and perpetual termination of oil and gas production, and to seek ways to have any alternative forms of trade. Israel started disarmament. Simultaneously, political parties and the militias taking effective control in each area in the Middle East started shrinking into small groups that sufficed themselves with regional self-reliant lifestyles. Strong bonds found between distant countries across the globe seemed to become weaker upon the global-wide unanimous termination of oil and gas production. But every country seemed to be still seeking alternative ways to supply energy for its citizens and the nation itself. As you've likely guessed, dear readers, those must have been carried out by B and her mates. I got to know that her protest group was founded by someone who had a connection with the oil company which announced its voluntary liquidation at the beginning of this series of events. I guess she brought Arthur's pieces to that person, and that person or brains of the group came up with a great scheme, in which they replicated and projected the CEO and the chairman at the press conference. And once it was conducted, there was this chain reaction happening all over the world, and at every key moment, someone created and projected key people's replica, such as the US president or the leaders of the Middle East countries, or someone else that I had no chance to know, who were acting behind the scenes. It is not my interest to describe this turnaround more, so I will hold off on writing this part now, with just a few additional subsequences. Our life became harder. We stopped producing plastics, reduced usage of all energies significantly as their prices soared. My family gave up returning to our home country as airfare became as expensive as properties, stopped using AI as it's highly energy consuming, and our life seemed to keep shrinking into something like previous century's one. My wife and daughter got tired of it, but I was personally excited about this drastic change, as this could be a turning point for humanity. It became my new habit to check world news thoroughly every day from various countries broadcasting as well as independent journalists, only in my company's office using the office's power. It was literally second by second that the world was changing, and at the same time I felt my view of the world and humanity gradually changing. On the other hand, I couldn't wipe out the view that we all will disappear someday. I found myself putting one foot in boiling lava and another in a barren glacier. Those two contradictory grounds kept me awake because I expected this kind of ambivalent state quite often plays a role as a seedbed of a new idea. And when one is expecting a new idea to come, it soars to a kind of higher level at which it can't sleep, as if driving a car on a highway. The more uncertain what the new idea will be like, the more alert my attention becomes. One day, I shouted on a dark and secluded street at night on my way home like madman you can find on every other street in London. This is it. This is it. This is what happened. On that day, the United States ended the majority of trade deals with my home country as part of deglobalization spreading across the world. The economic tide that lasted for more than 3/4 of a century has been suddenly cut off. This will change my country's people's views on their nation and the world, as well as my own view. Where are we going from here? It was honestly the first time in my life that this frequently asked question gained real weight. Of course, our final destination is the extinction and the complete disappearance of the planet itself. But we have to suffer through the long process until the termination. And through this process, we actually risk everything existing. I found it exciting, as now that who decides which way to go is nobody but us. In fact, we have been doing this as a gamble, with all human legacies as our stakes. You can tell that when you think of ruins of past wars. Those are our losses. After all, is it the matter of where I place value on, legacies or changes? I found myself swinging between those two poles. I prefer to preserve my efforts for good when I find them precious. I prefer to risk them at a moment when nothing seems to be worth being kept rather than being devoted. Why do I feel like I am exposed to the universe naked, at the edge of human history, when I devote all I have to the unknown? Perhaps it will be a happy death if I die in the midst of this kind of devotion. But this moment must always end. That is when I pause and realize that nothing will remain after my death. That is when my consciousness turns to this consciousness itself and realize that it has nothing to do with the universe. Then I extend this view to humanity as a whole, as an aggregation of consciousness, which tries to understand the universe and will disappear from the universe along with the understanding it has obtained. And after it has left the universe, there will be nothing remaining. Nothing will end up changing from before it existed once Earth has been evaporated. Here, the thing is, there is me who regard this destiny of humanity as a tragedy. This I have invented a perpetual motion machine of two persons who recognize each other forever, in which they witness each other's existence from outside, as one self-assurance of its own existence will ever be one-sided, thus incomplete proof, resisting the tragedy given there is nobody who recognizes Earth from outside. And I imagine that, from the same tragic sense, humans have ever invented superstitions that are always looking at them and understand that it is natural, intuitive sense, as it is so scary that there is no assurance that somebody will remember me forever after I die. Even if somebody will remember me, that person will die someday, and somebody else who remembers that person will die someday. and so forth. Furthermore, the unprecedented thing in human history ever is that we have no time enough to wallow in this kind of contemplation for the past, as our end is soon and tangible. I swing every day. I wander, freak out, freeze. When wandering, my mind is occupied by the future. We are barely able to keep the quality of life at an endurable level now. But what if the situation gets worse? Will I still be enjoying being exposed to the dynamic changes in our world and ourselves? Won't I be getting more impatient and narrow-minded as our resources are getting scarcer and the time remaining for us is getting shorter? Won't I be eventually only be shouted from my almost flattened heart at the end of my life? When my heart is gripped by these anxieties, only the XNUMX floating somewhere in the universe, carrying B and me intact, comforts me. Two men had arrived in London just days earlier, their faint sweat hinting at hard work during the day, but their eyes still gleamed with excitement. One of them was visibly more excited than the other, like everything in London, in this turbulent period, mirrored a glowing light in his eyes. But only the other man truly knew what his friend had seen that day, as the two shared the purpose in being here. The other was a calm, quiet guy who never demonstrated his ambition overtly, but he seemed to have something firm in his mind. They visited an apartment along a shaded street in Covent Garden, hoping to find an artist they'd heard of, a man rumored to be a brilliant portraitist. They were guided only by such rumors and eventually found him in the apartment. At first glance, he looked like a silent craftsman, with a thick beard, tightly closed-up lips, and distant eyes. But after only a few words, they realized he was a man driven by curiosity and experimentation. His speech was slower than most Londoners, so the visitors quickly realized he wasn't a local. "Where are you guys from?" "We are from Paris. And you?" "I came from Basel recently." And this conversation stopped at this point, as the two visitors looked not so interested in the city the artist was from. And as the artist shifted his eyes somewhere, he welcomed the two in his flat, let them in the largest room there. In that room, its windows opened onto the sky, unobstructed by buildings across the street. Even in the evening, it was still bright in white. The artist had them stand by the wall at the back of the room, which was draped with a dark green curtain. He pulled over a shelf, chest height, and placed it between them. Then he produced a stain rag from somewhere and draped it over the shelf. It was large enough to cover the shelf, and half of it hung down from the edge of the shelf's top. He stepped back and examined the whole scene. He asked, "How old are you guys?" The one responded, 29. The other, 25. "Quite young," the artist exclaimed. Oak boards of various sizes leaned against the front wall, overlapping with one another, among which the largest ones were taller than the grown man. There were also various sizes of easels by the wall. The largest one resembled a Gutenberg's printing press. A banquet table along the wall was cluttered with assorted items: coarse rags, soft stained clothes in red, black, blue, and green, furs of various mammals, folded carpets, stained brushes, charcoal pieces, and dozens of silver and ceramic plates filled with various colors of paint. And beside one of the windows, a small table was on another wall, with a stool, on the top of which were pieces of yellow paper, on which quite a few sketches of jewelry filled the spaces. He pulled out some garbs from a tall wardrobe on the corridor side of the room. He handed the flashy pink satin shirt to the more excited man, had the man put it on, then dressed up further with the black coat which had garbage bags sewn on both shoulders and a length of white fox fur that, when draped over the neck, reached down to the knees. Then he drew a dark brown brocade coat from the wardrobe and handed it to the quieter man. Looking at the man putting it on without excitement or hesitation, the artist did not give him any other garbs. The artist spent a few hours sketching the two men and their surroundings on a life-sized oak panel. After finishing the charcoal sketch, he began applying dark paints to the board, giving the objects mass, working as long as the sunlight lasted, until it finally sank behind a building across the street. At last, he released the men from their poses, standing still, gazing at the artist, their elbows resting on the shelf between them. The two men then stepped around to the other side of the oak board, full of anticipation, and they found themselves rendered as they'd expected, which were frozen in place, staring back at them arrogantly, lips and cheeks stiff, caught somewhere between a smirk and a seriousness, as this was their first time posing for a portrait. The more excited man found himself on a board, dressed in luxurious fabrics, while in real life he wore only garbage bags. It then made sense to him that they'd helped the artist imagine how the shoulders of the luxurious garb occupied the space. The quieter man found an accurate description of him on the board, which was more accurately himself than the one looking at the sketch. They noticed the rack atop the shelf had been rendered with intricate patterns not present in the real rack. Geometric designs covered the floor, which in reality was just plain wood. Books, spherical objects, a lute, and various measuring instruments appeared on the top or the middle of the shelf, drawing in outline, waiting for the artist to give them details. But where were they coming from? And they eventually noticed a weird oval drawn on the floor between their feet, stretching from right to left, already given a sharp diagonal shadow on the left, cast on the floor. The space between the oval and its shadow on the floor suggested that the oval was floating at leg height. They could not tell what it was as it hadn't been given details yet, but even if it had, they might still have struggled to understand it. Both men began to wonder what the artist planned to create. Wasn't this supposed to be just a portrait, a keepsake? The more excited asked directly, "What is this oval, monsieur?" The artist replied, "The future of us," grinned. The quieter quickly made the sign of the cross, breathless. I stood my daughter in front of the painting. The anamorphic skull was level with her eyes, so it should have been the first thing she noticed. Then after the two young men and objects on the shelf, the green drapes behind, and perhaps the crucifix behind everything. "What do you think it is?" I asked. I don't know." I walked her around to the right side of the painting, the angle from which we couldn't make sense of anything on the oak panel as they were meant to be seen, and lifted her into the air, moved her up and down to adjust her perspective until she could spot the skull. The painting was 6 foot tall and hung 20 inches off the floor, so she needed to view it from about 5 feet in height. When she finally saw it, she expressed a genuine shock. How much shock was it, without any context? You can also find the skull using a glass cup, I told her. Hearing that, she might have imagined holding a glass cup to her eye and spotting the skull through it. If she had, everything else would have warped in the curved glass. The two confident young men would have turned to shadows in an instant. Oh, my dear daughter, nevertheless, this is not enough. The skull, death, is not enough, as this death revealing itself to us is only our death as individuals. We die. We are destined to die. That is an unquestionable fact. But we also reproduce, as I did for you with my wife. So if I die, you will live on, or vice versa. And even if both of us die, my wife or someone else will. And this way humanity will never die all at once. Success, wealth, happiness, prosperity, fame, power, youth, memories of individuals must end. But how much do they matter to humanity? I admit that we share the certainty of death without exception, and if humanity is simply the sum of all those alive now, as B said somewhere the other day, the whole of humanity will quake with that fact if we all realize it. But someone will survive, whoever they will be. I don't care if they are not me or my daughter or grandchildren or relatives or my country's people or someone else I know. Even if catastrophe tears through humanity, someone will survive and carry humanity forward and one day flourish again, and the day will eventually come back. Our past efforts will be deciphered by those who come after. That is the basis of memento mori. Should it be a warning for individuals? When I held my daughter in my arms, her weight was surprisingly light. What does that mean? It means my own life is also light. The purpose, the meaning, and the achievements of my life are all light. Even the destiny of my life, my death, doesn't seem capable of giving them weight. The possibility that this little girl will grow up, have children, and pass on the genes I have passed on to her to the future generations even seems weightless. As if the skull in the painting, the XNUMX floating above the sky, had turned the real world into a fake. I'd brought my daughter here to see how things had changed since I encountered Arthur and Bea in this museum. I thought that by watching her walk a few steps ahead of me, I'd be reminded that that day had belonged to a different world. If comparing her to Bea walking a few steps ahead, hunting for the target of vandalism, and I'd persuade myself that that was a dream, that was a bifurcation into the reality or a dream, and that I'd taken a wrong turn into a dream, right here in room 4. If it had been a dream, the XNUMX, the idea of humanity and its destined extinction, would be turned over and become nothing more than a shadow, and consequently, everything on earth would gain its weight back. In short, I wanted my daughter to disprove that the XNUMX was real. But this is what was reconfirmed instead. There is nothing else assured to live forever. She stepped forward to the painting. She unzipped her shoulder bag, pulled out a small bottle of water, twisted the lid off, and flung the water at the painting. It stuck only the bottom, including the skull, due to her height and the clumsiness of her throw. Some visitors gasped, "Oh gosh," and nearby staff shouted, "No, no, no." Images flashed through my mind. Lawsuits, financial ruin, and years of humiliation and bankruptcy, daunting amounts of efforts to rebuild my family's life, through to my retirement and her adulthood. The staff rushed over and snatched the bottle from her hand and yelled at me, "Are you the guardian of this child?" I didn't respond and just stared at my daughter, still staring at the skull. What did you do? I asked. She didn't reply immediately, as though the skull captured all her attention. Then, after a moment, she said, I think this picture means we can do anything, because we've got nothing to lose. And I said to her, that's not true. We have too much to lose. It's time to end this story. I have nothing more to offer you. No further themes to unfold. No deeper ideas to develop. What was the question I raised at the beginning? Something about the immorality of writing without real readers. Is that possible after all? It no longer sounds right when I think of the XNUMX, as it means the absence of a witness, which is however needed to complete one's existence. Therefore, the only thing left for me to do is to cast this writing into the internet, hoping someone stumbles upon it. Though I know that this is something that author criticized as not serious. The XNUMX is a closed system which relies on nothing but itself. On the other hand, this writing always owes its existence to its readers. It doesn't work at all if, for example, I loop it back on itself, with a self-referential ending that circles to the beginning, pretending eternal perpetual continuity, because it's just goofing around while Earth is steadily moving toward its death. The internet has its own lifespan, so it is not immortal. Similarly, in this regard, the life of this writing is not secured if it resides within the internet, so it's not immortal. And again, despite everything, the only thing I can do with this writing is to release it into public view. Because now nothing written here feels more important or worth putting in a drawer than letting it be consumed by crows or mold. Meanwhile, the XNUMX is drifting through the universe and carrying humans in there, now and forever. What else could immortalize humanity more than that? Nothing. Because true immortality only comes when one cuts all ties with Earth. The one that must survive without needing anything from it. Never possible, even if one day someone succeeds in migrating to another planet, because the one would never stop being terrestrial. Or would they? Could they? Then what would they become? Martians? Would Martians remember what it was like to be Earthians? And if so, what would they remember about that? Surely not anything we know, just as we are not able to remember being non-human, just as we are not able to remember what someone else knows, just as we are not able to remember what we once were, just as we are not able to remember what we were a moment ago. Yes, it's like what I wrote at the beginning. What we used to be doesn't make sense to us. What feels like remembering something in the past is in fact interpreting what you now sense. You were not here before because you created your past just now, albeit you seem like you have been here since before, because things constituting you have been consistent and consistently making you sentient enough so you can find yourself and find you are different from anything else. And now I find my perspective shifting from a view that my cogito continues for a while but not eternally, to a view that my cogito is in the first place a momentary event that shortly begins and ends. And yet I still find myself clinging to immortality. But what kind of immortality is it? It is a book written in ancient language that we can decipher and translate into our language, a ruined pillar of an ancient pantheon that we can imagine people once danced and prayed around, a film that reminds us of how we used to see the world through the filmmaker's eye. This is the immortality of media, not a person. But the media always requires a decipher, like me for B for me. So this immortality is the immortality of a decipherer, not of a person. And I need my decipherer who has the same level of perspective as mine, which means I don't need a bird, a dog, a weed, a bacterium, nor a camera to understand me. I need you. Does that make sense to you when I say I need you? And if it does, what sense has it made in you? Do you need, in return, your decipherer? But sorry, I don't even know if you are here, because when you read this, I am not here. Alas. At the end of this writing, I ask one thing of you, dear readers. If, by some chance, you return to the beginning and reread it from there, or even if something from it comes back to you later, try not to read happiness, sadness, despair, and any other personal feelings into it, and read author B and Klim simply as A, B, and C, and D for my daughter. Try not to substitute those letters for people you know. Do not imagine their faces. Do not assume that somebody wrote this story. Try to think that this writing was created by mistake, by coincidence, like you found this writing by accident. XNUMX is the name for coincidence. I just wanted to preserve one coincidence, a random coincidence, whatever it was, against its inherent short lifespan, forever.